I'm not going to talk about traditional Indian methodology. I'm going to talk about what I am doing to develop Indian constructs, etc. And then you can decide whether you want to do that or not. But before I do that, I want to so I thought about whether we should call it Bharatiya management, or you want to call it Bharatiya Prabandha Shastra, or whatever you want to call it. I want to remind ourselves of a few things. So the first thing I always remind, in fact I remind my students in America about this, and it's because I learned it very late. I did not know this. Paul Kennedy wrote a book in 1990, and he presented the statistics that showed that India was the largest economy until 1857. And Sunitaji presented another recent study where now we have 3 different periods and how India's economy shrunk. But even until 1857, that's 7 years after the first Indian movement for freedom, India was still the largest economy. What is considered first world today, economically, was the third world, or actually there were no worlds. Japan only produced 1% of world GDP all the way up to 1948-49. US's GDP grew only after the first war or civil war, and then only in the late 1800s, so in the beginning of 1900s. So this is something that I want us to remember, because everything that we have done and we are doing is not poor man's philosophy. This is very important, and Dr. Mahadevan emphasized it, Dr. Sunita ji emphasized it, and we all need to remember this, because the colonizers have always told us that you are fakir because you don't know any better. No, we had wealth and we chose to be fakirs, or some of us chose to be fakirs. So it's not like this is a poor culture that did not have resources. So these are not ideas of and practices of a poor country or people of a poor country. We have always been diverse and tolerant. And I'm throwing this. I have asked some people, everybody I meet, I ask this. I read somewhere that there is no record of conflict between Arya and Dravid people. And if you know of any story, let me know, because I'm interested in it. But if there is no oral story of conflict between these two people, that should be enough to tell us that we believe in ahimsa and we have always valued it. Corruption. There was something circulating in WhatsApp about how India is corrupt and how our system is corrupt. And it's just like, I was actually placed because one of my students' father from Nepal, I'm originally from Nepal, he asked me that same question. He said, Bhawuk ji, you do research in culture. Can you tell me if this corruption business is what we do? We go to God and we bribe the God. And I said, I don't know the answer, let me think about it. And I reflected over it for a year or two. And I'm blessed that, Mother Gita is in my life, and then one day it just struck me that it's right there. Parasparam bhavayantah shreya paramam avapsatha. So the devas and the people have to interact and support each other. There's no bribing. It's not like it's a quid pro quo where we are exploiting. In fact, if you do not offer, and before offering you eat, that is stealing. And this is all in Canto 3, which is about Karma Yoga. So this is all relevant. So, people will give us all kinds of nonsense, and this is all coming from, that the colonizers have told us this, and our colonized mind runs towards it and accepts it happily. There are many contemporary undesirable practices that are not cultural. In fact, after the tragedy in New Delhi, I have been talking to women and asking them, and I'm trying to get stories of rape culture in India, and I haven't discovered one. So if you find some, do let me know, because it does not seem like it is part of our culture. I'm not denying it exists. All I'm saying is there is no cultural root to it. And all of this becomes topic for research that goes towards understanding Indian people and Indian mindset. So I think Bharatiya Prabandha Shastra, Indian management, has to be inclusive. And I'd like to think in simple terms. So what Mahadevanji does is Indian management, what Bhawuk does is Indian management, what Anku does is Indian management, what Netaji does is Indian management, what Subhasji does is Indian management. What Indian does is Indian management. If we are thinking about India, it's somehow connected to our ethos and ideas. I do want to say that it's a labor-intensive process. And Mahadevanji did not share with you how hard he has worked. So he was an engineering student at IIT Chennai, and he went to study Sanskrit, and he has taken 20 years to achieve that fluency. We were required, one subject in Nepal was required for everybody up to high school from 6 to 10 as Sanskrit. I really didn't learn anything. So only when I started studying Bhagavad Gita, then I started learning Sanskrit again. And then I took classes from Dr. Sharma at University of Hawaii, who is a Paninian. So we have to invest. There is no shortcut. So it is a labor-intensive process. You cannot collaborate with people and get anything. Why? Because I learn, I grow, I'm on a journey, and research also happens. So research is just a byproduct. This is not my raison d'etre. This is not why I live. So this is something that happens. We need to study all religions, and I do like to point out that the second largest Muslim population we have the second oldest mosque in the world, we have the first church that was built within 100 years of crucifixion. This is not only a Hindu country, this is a Muslim country, this is a Christian country, no offense meant. Nobody knows more about Christianity than we do, nobody knows more about Islam than we do, because it has been here for that long. So we don't have to play second fiddle to anybody. So all texts, all religions and some of sampradayas are important, and we should study all of that. And this includes, of course, Guru Granth Sahib and all the writing of Kabir Sahib and others. We should use all languages. So this is for all of us in the room. Many years ago in 2005, I used the word vernacular, and this participant came up to me and said, "Sir, you should not use that word." And I said, "I stand corrected, I will never use that word." So we have Indian languages. The colonials, for them English was one language, everything else was vernacular. It was really putting us down. All our languages are major languages in Indo-European language group. All the major Indian languages are established languages. So we should write in English. I'm talking in English, but the point is we should not forget our language roots. We should go back to our languages and draw from them the texts that exist in all these languages. There are geographic differences, and this is all about management. Food is food management. We need to know about foods and what is happening. Fast food is just one variety of food, and we got the most variety of food. So this is something, so anybody who is interested in food, this is something that is Indian management. Dance, music, films, I love films, and this is wonderful. Literature, way of life. Our research has to be multi-paradigmatic, multi-method. And I will emphasize what Mahadevanji said. I was going to say it, but he said, don't start with English texts. That is a definite way to not do service to Indian management. Now here I want to be a little bit provocative, and to be that I need to go back and say that after my mother and my father and my brother and sister in my family, my first guru was Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. So I learned everything from Vivekananda. But he spoke to English-speaking people. It's not that he did not understand. He taught in native language, but talked to people in English. So if we only read Vivekananda in English, we only read Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan in English, and then we write about Indian management, we are going to lose it. So this is no disrespect meant. Study them, these are saints, they are wise people, they can explain, they can guide us. But for research, we will have to put on another hat and go to our shastras, to the commentaries. My respect for Indian research came like this. So I'm a fresh PhD, assistant professor in Hawaii. We have a very good connection of Indian texts. I was doing research on culture and creativity when my thesis is India Values Spirituality, so all the geniuses are directed in this domain. So I happen to be in a library, and if you can, so this whole half this room, shelf space, was occupied by volumes that were all the commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. When I saw that, I said, hats off. This is annotated bibliography plus more. Everybody who has said anything about Srimad Bhagavatam verses, it's all compiled, and it takes like 20 volumes to put them together. Somebody dedicated his or her life to do that. So I realized that India has a long tradition of scholarship. I was slow to understand and learn. So use English, but also embrace the other languages. So why should we do India-focused research? And then I'll talk about developing Indian constructs. This is what I've been doing, building models from text. So there was some idea about developing models, building scales from text, bridging micro world and life world, which happens very naturally. So basically the idea there is, I don't think I'll cover everything, but the basic idea there is our saints are practitioners who know about the world of spirituality and also this world. And so whatever they have said, if we use that, and then our Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and the text are scientific world, or these are research world, these are theories, they are full-fledged philosophies. So we can then bring them together. So everything that Ramana Maharshi says, if we fit that with what is in the text, we may be able to bridge both the world of practice and the world of theory. And so that would be one way to do the research. Why India-focused research? I think we've already heard enough from Dr. Mahadev and Sunitaji. But in the West, psychology and philosophy is divorced, thanks to Watson. We need to integrate philosophy and psychology. And for that matter, we need to integrate all disciplines. Here about it, Mahadev said something beautifully, and I wanted to put another spin on it, that in our text, it's not like this is only Artha Shastra. So if you study Chanakya, it is not going to be only Artha Shastra. No text is exclusive discipline bound. Why? Because we are human beings. Human issues are integrated. The solutions will be integrated. So there is no point dividing it into parts, because then we'll come to Gestalt that some of the whole is bigger than some of the parts. But that is the method of the experimental psychology and science. You need to break into parts and study the parts and put it together and it becomes one. Well, it doesn't become one. And that's why we can't solve the problem of poverty. We can't solve the problem of, discrimination. Allport gave us theory of discrimination, almost 100 years ago, but it exists in the United States of America. So the point is we cannot separate things, and ours is integrative worldview, and that's why we need to focus on India-focused research. Theory building not only serves to predict future behavior, but it also helps understand behaviors. And so this is a great philosopher. He was at University of Hawaii. I'm blessed. I did not know about his work until many years later. But he basically says that if you want to understand Indian philosophy, you have to understand India in its totality. You cannot compare Indian philosophy with Western philosophy out of context. You can't take this and compare this. It doesn't work like that. So I'm very happy that there are wise people even in the West who understand it. So we're using the wisdom of scriptures. So the methodology is analyzing the Indian scriptures, which are the depository of Indian philosophical thoughts, and then have an important role in development of indigenous psychological constructs. And then finally, my mentor, Professor Triandis, who passed away on 1st June this year, and he, way back in 1960s, he was a classical psychologist. He asked people all over the world to send him indigenous constructs, and he got nothing. So he was kind of disappointed. He spoke 7-8 languages himself, all European, but so he was talking to a friend, and Jerry Prof told him that the problem, Harry, is that all our colleagues are Western educated. So they only think like us. And when you think about it, this is almost like 50 years, and we still are, going back to the Western way. So then I started developing indigenous model, and I'm blessed because I have a practice. So I like to tell people, I am a practicing Hindu. This whole idea about I'm secular, I'm not Hindu. This gets under my skin. I am a practicing Hindu. It got under my skin when he does his job good, but the famous writer, he was on a television, and he said, you have to understand, I'm a secular person. I'm like, why are you selling Indian stuff then? Probably he doesn't believe it himself. You will know who I'm talking about, but don't worry about it. So indigenous model, and then models grounded in the wisdom tradition and texts that are still being used in India. So when I develop a model from Bhagavad Gita, and then people will say, but that's old. I say, people are using it, people are reading it, people are citing it. So as a cultural researcher, this is contemporary. If it was not used, then you could say it is, it's in the archives. But this is in every home, this is sometimes in people's pockets, and people are using it. So you can't really say that it is dead stuff. It is actually being used as we speak. So labor intensive part here comes, but there is also fun. So the reason I do it is because there is growth for me, and I really will not do anything else. So I still have 3 streams of research I do in intercultural training research and diversity in the workplace, but this has become my major focus now. So we have to know ourselves. You are the most important resource. Your experience is valid, even if it does not fit theory. So anytime you are studying a Western theory and in your experience it doesn't fit, voila, you have n=1 found something that, according to Popper, falsifies the theory. But you can't go and tell the world that I have falsified the theory. Now you need to go and do more research to falsify it. Your experience is valid, even if it doesn't fit theory. Know your culture. This is where it becomes exciting to research in Indian ethos. Because now you can watch movies and you are still doing research. So I catch first show movie, even on a weekday, and sometimes people say, really? I mean, you don't have work? No, this is work. I'm a cultural researcher. Play, dance, art, breathe culture, I say, because this is how we can become. And then culture shapes everything. So that's my gift from cross-cultural psychology, cultural psychology. Thinking, feeling, doing, even neuron circuits are actually wired by culture. And we have findings that first generation Japanese Americans think differently from Japanese, and second generation Japanese Americans think differently from first generation Japanese Americans. We are blessed to have multiple generations of people in Hawaii. We have studies that show that. So indigenous research requires integration of theories, models, etc. It's from within, must proceed comparative research. So unless we have a strong Indian management, we can't really compare. You are comparing in a vacuum. We have no comparison. We have nothing to compare. We need Indian management, Indian psychology to compare with Western psychology, Western management. So this is my favorite. Sometimes people will say, who cares? It's like, well, first thing, we have nothing to lose. They don't care about us anyway. If you look at the number of papers published about India in Western journals, you will know they don't care. So it is like Super 30. You have nothing to lose, only move forward. It's like regression effect. Regression to the mean. You're not going to go down. You're just going up. And the other one, we have 17% of the world population. Why do we care? What works for us works for 17% of the world population. That's good enough. The Western theory works only for 1% of the world population. Keep that in mind. So we don't have to apologize. And I tell this to my Chinese students. I work with, I've been going to China. And I tell them, you have 17% of the world population also. Don't worry about the West. Just do Chinese psychology, Chinese management. So how do we develop Indian constructs? So this is kind of a method that I have used, and then I have worked on a number of constructs. So examine the dictionary meaning. And so you can start with English word. So you are interested in leadership, so look at the synonyms and antonyms of leadership, translate each of them into Hindi, Nepali, Sanskrit, Marathi, whatever you are good with, Tamil, Malayalam, and then analyze its uses in popular scriptural text. So for me, Bhagavad Gita comes handy because I study Durga Saptati, because I chant and I fast twice a year. Ramayana of Tulsidas, this I have not been able to go back to. Rudra Shatai, again, because I'm a priest once a month, so it's part of my my life. And these are again things that people are using to. So I say in Nepal, given any Saturday, you will find hundreds of people chanting it, and that's true also for India. And so people are chanting these verses, so it is not something that is in the library, in the archives. It is there in people's home. Guru Granth Sahib, Sukhmani Sahib, the Holy Quran and Hadith. I have a student from Saudi Arabia. So the way it works with him and me, I don't know Arabic. So I make him read the original from Quran in Arabic. I close my eyes and listen to him. Then I tell him to translate it, read translation. And then I say, now what does it tell? So it has taken him some time, but now he's finally, so he's going to work on leadership, but we are drawing examples from the Quran. So you start with that, but they are also blessed because they have hadiths, which is cultural, basically, like, it's a little younger than our Puranas, but basically there is cultural material there. So when I worked on Lajja, I also used Kamayani. So this is what is fun. After a long time, I went back to studying Kamayani. Almost like from 1974 to 2017. That's when I studied it first, and then I come back and do it. Because I knew he talks, Shankar Prasad talked about Lajja. It was one of the sections in Kamayani, so I went there. And then analyzing the constructs usage in proverbs and in daily communication. So if we follow this method, I think we will be able to find meaning for any constructs. Take manas. So this is where we have to be careful. Manas is not mind. Mind is not manas, because mind is only cognitive. Manas is the center of thinking, feeling, doing. Sankalp is in manas, feeling. You're feeling down, man nahi lag raha hai, man dukhi hai, that's manas, that's affect, and everything thinking. And we have a long tradition, so we have the manas in Yajurveda, Tanmaya Mana Shiva Sankalpamastu, the 6 verses, and it's such a great source. So if you translate it, it gives you characteristics of manas. And then you can use manas in Bhagavad Gita, and it's interesting, Krishna says, I am manas among Indriyas. So you can't really neglect, you can use all kinds of metaphors. Kabir has hundreds verses on manas. And so that gives you different metaphors of what is manas like. And then of course manas in Bollywood songs, Mere Man Ki Ganga, Tere Man Ki Jamna. And from there to, see, Indian psychology and management is fun to study, you can cover everything. And then manas in everyday daily mediums, etc. So it's an indigenous construct, it's coming from the Vedas. Is erroneously translated as mind, it captures cognition, emotion and behavior. So this was a learning for me. So I don't use mind at all. So I write in English, but I use manas in italics and give a footnote, meaning that it covers all 3 aspects. And as cross-cultural psychologist, I know you can't translate. Translation is a bad thing to do, so people have to learn. It's popular construct found in life world as it continues to be used in bhakti literature, etc. And then needs to be examined in psychological form. So following kind of this approach, I have studied Lajja. And what is interesting is in the West, Lajja is considered stable, shame, and guilt is considered unstable. So guilt is good for you, shame is bad for you. So they think we are shame culture. And it all gets just, all confusion vanishes because I chant from Durga Sapshati, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Lajja Rupena Samsita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo. How can this be negative? It is mother's attribute. Go to Canto 16, Bhagavad Gita, the Devi Sampadas, 26 of them, one of them is Re. Adi Shankar translates in one word, Lajja, moves on. Didn't say anything after that. So there must be synonym. So how can a Devi Sampada be negative? So what I discovered, it was really a learning experience. And then I looked at also hadiths, translated in English, so I don't know Arabic. And I found that even in Prophet, the great Prophet said, one who does not have haya, God bless him. Like it's a slippery slope. Don't even talk about that person. So it's an important construct across the nations in this part of the world. Okay. And then I studied Lok Sangraha, again from Bhagavad Gita, Shraddha, and then you can see you can draw diagrams. It's not like, so, we can do these things. And then in Indian concept of self, building models from text, this came early, but okay, here is a method that is traditional. So this I learned from a disciple of Chinmayananji. So he was on a foreign trip. When he came back, these young recruits, the first batch of Sandeepni, the monks to be, they were very excited when he came back. Guruji, when we were traveling, we went through the Upanishads. And if you have heard and known Chinmayananji as a master of one sentence, I looked at him and said, "You idiots, you don't go through the Upanishads, you allow the Upanishads to go through you." So now I am calling that the method for Indian research. So I allow Bhagavad Gita to go through me. I allow Durga Saptashati to go through me. I allow Rudra Ashtadevi to go through me. So when I went to study the Ashtavakra Gita, I have to study. So I allow that to go through. So you have to take time to study these things. You can't go through them. You really have to do the Manana, Shravan Manan Nidhyasana. So this is definitely a model, and I will stop here, just tell you how models are hidden in Bhagavad Gita. And this is like literal, So it's Dhyayato Vishyam Pumsa Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Vijayate. So to humor me, I actually thought I was contributing to the great Krishna and Vedavyasa by saying that, they only talked about anger when your wish is not fulfilled. So think about it. Pumsa, the person, self, Dhyayato thinks about Sangha, Teshu Pajayate, attachment. That is to desire, kama krodho vijayate. So I say, well, actually from that you set goals, and when goals are not fulfilled, then you get angry. And when goals are fulfilled, you probably get in the circle of 99 to 100, so you keep doing, you want more of it, you get greed. So I really thought I was contributing, I was adding something new. Well, many years later, you keep studying, then I realized that Markandeya Rishi has actually said exactly that. So he covered that about 10,000 years ago before I could. But it's good to, it humbles you, so you've got to study, and then you claim something, and then you learn. So there are a lot of models that already exist like this. So people tell me, can you test it? Of course you can test it. Is it tested? It's tested in my experience. I can tell you how it works in my experience. It works in other people's experience. That's why people are nodding. And so it's not that I need to go and collect data again, but we can test it. And I encourage that we should test it. I think I'll stop here. So we'll come back to question and answer later. Thank you, Prof.